A Nintendo PlayStation just sold at auction for $360,000, and rightfully so. You probably have a lot of questions about that. So let's back it up. In the early 90s, Nintendo and Sony had partnered up to make a console in what looked like the first appearance of the PlayStation brand. This SNES with a CD-ROM looking console even showed up at CES 1991, but it wasn't long before Nintendo backed out of the deal. Left with only about 200 of these Nintendo PlayStations, they were supposedly destroyed, except for this one. The split actually led to Sony entering the gaming space by itself, and because of that, we got the PlayStation in 1994. The Nintendo PlayStation is just one of those weird artifacts that's left over from a deal that never was, and with the belief that there's literally only one of these left on Earth, you can start to understand how it was able to fetch $360,000. So who is this highest bidder on this Nintendo PlayStation? It's Greg McLemore, the founder of PetsAndToys.com. According to the seller, Terry Diebold, an offer of $1.2 million was turned down prior to the auction. Diebold supposedly acquired the console through an online bankruptcy auction, which he paid $75 for. So this got me thinking, what else from gaming's past is super valuable or went for a buttload of money? And what I found is kind of surprising, I guess. I mean, games go for some money sometimes. Let's start with what's probably the most well-known ultra-valuable NES game that ever had a US debut. It's called Stadium Events, and it had an extremely limited run because it was recalled almost immediately after going on sale so that it could just be repackaged. That left only a handful of these original games on the street, and although there's some debate as to how many of these are around, complete copies of the game have gone for upwards of $40,000. Last year, a copy of Super Mario Bros. For the NES sold for over $100,000. But how, you ask? That's the game that comes with every single NES that's ever been purchased. How could this go for so much money? Well, it's because the copy that's sold is apparently the only one in existence that still has an incredibly rare sticker seal on top. It's a sticker. That's the only reason. For context, the same version of this game with just one of those hang tabs sold for $30,000. Then there's this $75,000 sealed copy of the original Mega Man from its original production run. It also has this weird variant on the back box that says the villain of the game is Dr. Wright, when we're all much more familiar with that saying Dr. Wily instead. But don't worry, this copy of Mega Man still has that horrifyingly bad front box art we all still have nightmares about. Hey, so remember the E.T. Atari cartridges that were buried out in the desert? Well, somebody dug them up back in 2014 and put them on eBay. In addition to E.T., there were copies of Asteroids, Warlords, Defender, and others, and when it was all said and done, all of the garbage games that were dug up fetched $37,000. Back in 1990, Nintendo held world championships in 29 cities that featured specially made gold cartridges with multiple games loaded on each of them for competition. Supposedly only 26 of these golden carts exist, with many of their locations still unknown. In 2014, one of these went for just over $100K on eBay, and that's with the label torn off. This got me thinking, I have a bunch of old games for NES and Genesis, so I started checking on some of the more obscure games in my collection using a site called Game Value Now. Turns out a complete copy of this weird game I own called Hellfire could probably pull in around $90. All right. Well, that's it for me. I want to know if you have anything in your collection that you think might be valuable, if it's sitting in the basement of your home, and maybe your dad calls you up every weekend and he's like, oh, Jesus Christ, Jeff, come home and get your stupid video games out of my house. I want to see the carpet again. And you're like, Dad, leave me alone. I'll get there when I have the time. And he's like, they're going in the garbage if you don't get them out by next month.